Welcome, students. In today's session, we are going to talk about the poem Ode to the West Wind, written by P.B. Shelley. So, the poem was written in 1819, but it was published in 1820, and it is considered as one of Shelley's greatest poems. Okay, Ode to the West Wind. So we know that an ode is a poem that is addressed to a particular subject. Okay, and in the poem, the poet expresses his thoughts and feelings about that particular subject. Here in this poem, Shelley has chosen the west wind as his subject, and the poem is addressed to the west wind. We know that there are 4 seasons in one year: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And blowing of the west wind marks the ending of the summer and beginning of the autumn season. Okay. This poem is written in 5 stanzas. In the first stanza, poet describes the activities of the west wind on land. In the second stanza, he describes the activities of the west wind in the air. In the third stanza, he talks about the effects of the west wind on water. Then, in the fourth stanza, he establishes a link between his own personality and the personality of the west wind. And in the fifth stanza, poem ends with a note of optimism. Okay. Now you are looking at the text of the poem. So let us begin. O wild west wind, thou breath of autumn's being, thou from whose unseen presence the leaves dead are driven like ghosts from an enchanter fleeing. In the very beginning, the poet personifies the west wind and addresses the wind. O west wind. Now here he is addressing to the west wind. Thou means you. Breath of autumn's being. Breath means sans. Okay. Thou breath of autumn's being. Autumn is the season after summer and before winter. You can also say Sharad Ritu. Okay. So he describes the west wind as the breath of the autumn season. Thou, from whose unseen presence the leaves dead are driven like ghosts from an enchanter fleeing. Thou means you. So he says that this west wind is unseen. Unseen means invisible hai. Okay, he says that this west wind is invisible, but you can feel its presence when it blows and drives the dead leaves lying on the ground. In the season of autumn, trees shed their leaves and there are leaves everywhere on the ground. And when the west wind blows, it drives away all the dead leaves lying on the ground. So he says, thou from whose unseen presence the leaves dead are driven like ghosts from an enchanter fleeing. Like ghost from an enchanter fleeing. Enchanter means magician. So here poet uses a simile, okay, and he compares the dead leaves with ghosts or spirits, you can say, and he compares the west wind with an enchanter. Enchanter means magician, jadugar, okay. So the west wind drives the dead leaves away in the same way as the magician drives away ghosts or spirits. Yellow and black and pale and hectic red, pestilence stricken multitudes, O thou who charitest to their dark wintry bed. Yellow and black and pale and hectic red. Now, here the poet describes these dead leaves as yellow, black, pale and red in color. Okay. Pestilence stricken multitudes, and these dead leaves are in multitude. That means they are in a large number, and these leaves seem to be afflicted with some kind of disease. Pestilence means you can say mahamari जिसे हम कहते हैं. So the dead leaves, these dead leaves are in multitude, in a large number, and they seem to be afflicted with some disease or with some pestilence. Okay. O thou who charitest to their dark wintry bed. Now here again he addresses to the west wind and says that who charitest to their dark wintry bed, the winged seats where they lie cold and low, each like a corpse within its grave, until thine azure sister of the spring shall blow. Now here in these lines he is addressing the west wind and says that the wind carries the winged seeds. Also, the wind carries these seeds to their dark wintry bed where they lie cold and low. So autumn is the season that comes before the winter, and after winter comes spring season. Spring means बसंत ऋतु जिसे कहते हैं. In spring season, fresh buds bloom and vegetation begins to reappear. But in winter, these seeds that will germinate in the spring season, they lie in a passive state beneath the ground. Okay. In the winter, these seeds are in their dark bed because they are under the earth, and they will continue to lie underground till the season of spring comes. So here poet says that like corpse within its grave, until thine azure sister of spring shall blow. So here the poet compares these underground seeds with corpse. Corpse means dead body, or you can say lash. Okay, within its grave. Grave means kabr. Okay, so these seeds are like dead bodies that are buried in their graves, and they will continue to remain underground till the spring season comes. Thine azure sister of the spring shall blow her clarion over the dreaming earth, and fill with living hues and odors plain and hill. Now, poet calls the wind of spring the azure sister of west wind. Azure means blue, because there is clear blue sky in the season of spring. So he says that when spring will come, it will blow her clarion. Clarion means trumpet. Okay. So he says that when spring season will come, it will blow her clarion to awake the dreaming earth. He is calling the earth dreaming because in winter the earth is covered with snow and there is no sign of vegetation. So it seems as if the earth is sleeping and dreaming in the winter season. But when the spring comes, it blows its trumpet to awake the dreaming earth, and spring season fills the hills and plain. Plain means you can say मैदान जिसे कहते हैं, and hill mountain. Okay, so the spring season fills the hills and plain with beautiful and colorful flowers. That means when spring comes, the earth covers with beautiful and colorful flowers, and fragrance of these flowers. Odors means fragrance. Okay, so and the fragrance of these flowers is everywhere in the air. Okay, driving sweet birds like flocks to feed in air. Now, in this line, poet compares the spring with a shepherd. Shepherd means you can say गडरिया जिसे कहते हैं जो भेड़े चराता है. Now in here poet is comparing the spring season with shepherd. He says that just as a shepherd takes his flock means झुंड जिसे कहते हैं, flock of sheep to the field in order to graze or to feed them, in the same way spring drives the birds out of the seeds in which they were shut in the season of winter. Okay. Wild spirit, which are moving everywhere, destroyer and preserver, hear, oh hear. The wild west wind is moving everywhere. The poet calls the wind a destroyer and a preserver because west wind is a destroyer of the dead leaves. Okay, and at the same time the west wind is the preserver of the seeds. So he calls it a destroyer and a preserver. So in this stanza, first the poet calls the west wind the breath of the autumn season. He compares the west wind with the magician who drives the dead leaves just like a magician drives the ghosts away. Then he says that the wind preserves the seeds underground where they lie like a dead body within a grave. Okay, then comes the spring season and these underground seeds turn into birds. Okay, and the whole atmosphere fills with beautiful colors and fragrances of the blooming flowers. Then in the end, he calls the wind a destroyer and a preserver as well because it destroys the dead leaves and it also preserves the seeds. So here ends the first stanza of the poem. That is all for today's lecture. We will continue our poem in our next video. Thank you.